Hello guys and welcome to a new video. So in the upcoming videos we're just going to focus primarily on getting the Termi project completed. So I will show you pretty much different scenarios, and essentially these scenarios are going to be similar to what you guys are going to be doing in your individual projects, and you should be able to get them done. So to get started, recall last time we worked on sign up form. So we had a form, people sign up, putting some information, their names, email, phone numbers, and then they click submit. Once they click submit, they go to a new page called confirm.php. So in confirm.php, we basically, displayed what the users already typed in using actually post. So in this video, we're just going to be able to actually show you guys how you would be, taking the user information, their name, phone number, email address, and storing that in the database. So that's going to be really similar to what you guys are going to be doing in your project. So to do this, first of all, this is actually the page that we had. So we have first name, email, phone number. So essentially now, kind of relating this to the database topics we talked about, essentially I will have a table. This table is going to be called something like users, and then this table will have at least 3 columns, one for their name, one for their email address, and one their phone. And recall, talking about normalization and like primary keys and things like that, we're going to have one more column that's going to store their IDs, and then the ID is just going to be the primary key. It's going to be auto increment. It's going to be an integer. And that's essentially how, kind of like we're going to take the user information, add one more piece of data, the ID, to their information, and storing that in the table. So to do this, first of all, I already have my XAMPP starting. So you need to make sure your application manager is actually open. Here's mine, and you can see now with mine I already have all the servers running. In your case, depending on the state of your machine, they might not be started, and you need to start them all. So now once you go there, you basically, now let's create the database to show you how we're going to be able to do this. I'm going to go localhost, and then once you go to localhost, this page should actually pop up, and then you need to go phpmyadmin. Now in here we're going to be, like creating a database. So like new, I'm just going to call mine finally project, and then create. So once you do this, here is actually the finally project, and then we're going to create a table. So in this case, we're going to call a table called users, so we are able to store all these different information. Now for users, as we just discussed, we're going to have 4 columns: ID, name, email, phone. Okay, I mean, you can name them whatever you want, but logically that actually makes sense. So we're going to have ID, name, email, phone number. ID is an integer, recall, and then because it's an integer, we need to actually make it auto increment. We also need to make it as a primary key. So under attributes, not attributes, index, primary, and also it's going to be auto increment. Okay, and then for name, it's going to be a varchar of 25, so 25 characters max. Email is also going to be varchar 25. Phone number could be an integer, but some people might use dashes, so let's actually stick also to varchar of 25. So varchar, it already includes integer anyways, so that's a good thing to think about. So save, and here's actually our table, and now you can see pretty much it's empty table. There is nothing in there. Essentially what's going to happen is users are going to put their information here, click submit, and then their information is going to be stored in the database. That's the idea of this project and essentially this video to begin with. So now in order to do this, kind of like PHP provides native support for MySQL database. What this means is PHP has built-in functions that come from the language itself. Those functions actually allow for your PHP script to connect with the database and allow you to do so many different operations on your database. So essentially, what you basically are going to be learning are primarily going to be three different functions. The idea is exactly the same. Whatever you're going to do, just going to be exactly the same, but the arguments or the data that you're going to pass to those functions are going to be different. The rest is just going to be exactly the same. Okay, so now what we're going to do first is we need to connect our script to our database. So we need to let the application know about the database, about, like some information related to the database. So the script is going to be able to put data in the database as well as pull data from the database. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a file. This file, I'm going to call it db.php. You can name it anything you want, but something like a database. So we know this file is actually doing this. Why do we do this? Is because you need to make sure you divide your applications into like different files. Typically, each file is going to do one thing. So if something goes wrong, pretty much what to fix like a lot quicker rather than everything is just in one long file. So it's my project db.php, and now in db.php what we're gonna have is the way things I like to organize my things is this way. So remember, we need this application is just going to be related to the database, so we need pretty much store some database information. Now there is actually a built-in function in PHP called MySQLi connect. So this MySQLi connect is just going to actually allow you to connect the script into the database. So now this needs 4 different pieces of information. So what I really like to do is put all the information as variables, and then essentially MySQL, we're going to pass those information to the function MySQLi connect. So those information, first of all, is the host. So the host is pretty much where is the database, located. Like in this case, remember we're using XAMPP. So your database as well as your script live on the same machine, and that's actually called localhost. Remember, when you start your Chrome browser, that's essentially what you need to do. So this is going to be like just comment this. So provide information to connect to DB database. So once you have the database, remember you need also some username and password. Not everybody's allowed to connect to your application. So we'll have a user, and then for user for XAMPP, it's actually by default called root. If you look into XAMPP documentation, they actually specify that, as well as we need a password, and the password is actually an empty string. Okay, so that's how XAMPP states for us. One last thing is the database. So what database we're actually connecting to. Remember, like if you go to MySQL Workbench or phpmyadmin, there's a whole bunch of databases. What exact database our script is actually needing? In this case, we called it final project. So your case might be a little different, so just keep that in mind. So now, once I have all these different information, now I can just use the variables, and that's going to make things a lot easier. So now, MySQLi connect, it requires the host, it also requires the user, it also requires the password, and it also requires the database name. Now, one thing I like to do is put this in a variable. So basically, rather than dealing with this whole function, now you can deal with just the variable con for connection. Okay, so now, kind of like to test things out and make sure you get everything correctly, let's do an if statement. So now we have if exclamation point, and this means if the connection is not successful, so if no connection, we're just going to call a built-in function in PHP called die. What die means, it's kind of like a break or kind of like exit pretty much in Java. So, so the script is just going to exit, and then the die actually, takes like an argument, like a string, which gives you some information about what happened. So why did it die? So we're going to say like connection error, and then we're just going to add MySQL I. That's another function, MySQL I connect error, and that's it. And then else, we're just going to actually like echo some kind of like a paragraph, connection successful, then close the paragraph. So this is actually our script now. Okay, so it's actually complaining, and that's because we don't have a semicolon in here. Okay, so if no, I think like although we're seeing an error, I think just because of that one, I think I'm not seeing anything so far. But if there is an error, we're gonna fix it. Okay, yeah, it's gone now after I saved my script. So now this is my database file. Now, how would I let other files know about this file? There is actually a kind of like a function in PHP called include. Now, what include does, it allows you to embed one file in another file. So now this actually confirm.php, we're actually gonna be like included in other files. Particularly, it's just gonna be in confirm.php, because in sign up I don't need the database in here. I need the database usage in confirm.php. So the way you would do this is you're gonna actually include this in here. Now actually I'm just gonna remove these because I'm just gonna give you like more room to look at. I mean, it's not the best practice, but it works fine. So now what I'm gonna do in here is I will just include db.php in this file. So this actually gonna make this file appear in this file. So essentially, recall in PHP, it's interpreted language, and in PHP, similar to other languages, the interpreter is just gonna go line by line. So this is actually pretty much the first line in my script. So as of now, this script has only 5 lines. But if you look into db.php, there's like 25 lines. So in reality, this file is 25 plus 5, which is like a total of 30 lines. Although you only see it as a total of 5 lines, but in reality it's 30 lines. And because include is the very first statement in this script, it's going to include this thing at the very top. It's going to do things in order. So this one is just going to happen all together at the beginning, and then it's just going to be followed by the echo. Okay, so this is one. One thing I like to do, so like bring the other file. And by the way, I'm just going to actually post the code once I'm done with the whole project. I'm just going to post it on GitHub for you guys, so you can see it, and then you can use it if you want to for your projects. So now one thing I like to do is recall from last video, we like deal with this as just the associative array post. Now I like to actually also use variables. So rather than dealing with this every time, because I'm going to be using this multiple times, let's define this in a variable. So name is actually post name, and then email is actually also post email. Okay, so and I think for the sign up form, we have name, email, phone number. So I'm gonna also do this for the phone number, and I need to do it because in last video we didn't just use this really, but in this video we're gonna be storing all these pieces of information in the database. So I'm actually say phone, it's just gonna be post phone. So now actually, like I can now, rather than this guy, I can just say, well, name, and email address is just $email. Okay, but now we're going to do even more stuff. So now we will take these variables, store them into the database. So now we make the connection to the database. So it means we're, doing some progress. And then the next stuff is, there is a built-in function which, is something you're going to be using like all the time. It's actually called MySQLi query. So if this was a, like database, or if this was a web programming course, I'm just going to actually talk more about what this does. But essentially all the functions you see so far, they actually, MySQL stuff. So notice again, this is PHP, but this specifically says this is a MySQL operation. And there is I in the end, and the I stands for improved. So essentially now, like in the old way of how PHP was working with MySQL database, there were some limitations. It was not supporting, for instance, object-oriented stuff, but with MySQL improved, object-oriented is supported. And it's actually now the standard. So if you try to use the old MySQL to connect to PHP, it's not actually, to connect, to MySQL, it wouldn't work. So you have to use MySQLi now. And actually I posted on ECN some like like a primer for you guys on this if you want to refer to. I think that's a great resource if you, for those who want to refer to that resource. So for this now, essentially MySQLi query, as the name implies, we're gonna have some SQL code in here. So here is, you're gonna have some SQL in as an argument, and it's just gonna run the SQL. So it's really, really so simple. And the only difference in everything I'm gonna show you is depending on your project, and we're gonna see some other examples. The only difference gonna happen is what exactly you're gonna put in MySQLi query. The rest is just gonna be identical, no changes. So in this case, what's gonna happen is we will, take in these and then store this into the database. So the way I like to do this is, rather than putting the SQL like select and stuff like that, I like to create a variable. It's like a string. You can call it like SQL or anything you want, and then put the query in here, and then essentially, rather than passing a string for MySQLi query, you pass the variable. Okay. So in this case, we're gonna insert, these data into the database. So if you recall from SQL, it's actually insert into. What's the table name now? Because remember, we already passed the database information. So now we need just the table. So the table is users. So now for users, we have ID, name, email, and phone. But remember, ID is auto increment, so I'm not going to actually use it. So I'm just going to be using name, email, and phone, right? Yeah, email, phone. Yeah, that's right. And then values. That's it. So now the values are just going to be this guy, and this guy. Remember, these are all strings, so you have to pass them as a string. Okay, it's not like the $name. They have to be enclosed in codes. Now, one thing I want to show you is, remember, just like Java, in PHP, if I do now double quotes, PHP is gonna think this double quote belong to this double quote, and it's gonna cause an error. So you have to escape those codes. The way you would escape them is by using \. So it's just gonna be like that, name, and then also you have to have double quotes after name, but also you have to escape them. So \, and then double quotes, and then pretty much I'm just gonna take this, copy it multiple times, and instead of name now, it's just gonna be email, and then instead of name, it's just going to be phone. Okay. So now if you recall, name is just going to, pretty much be, it's just going to contain this variable name, email, email, phone, and phone. Okay. So these are from the table, name, email, phone, and these guys are these variables. Okay. So once you do this, pretty much, we have MySQL query. So now this MySQL query, in addition to taking the SQL, it also requires the connection variable, which is in DB, it's actually con. And we can use this con variable in this file because we included that file. So it's just going to be con and then SQL. Now, to check if everything is fine, so now kind of like check if query is okay, we're going to have like an if statement. So if, and it's really nice, and you need to do it that way because sometimes, like, if there is a problem with your query, if you don't have an if statement, it's just going to actually be really hard to know what's happening. So we're just going to say, well, echo some paragraph like record inserted successfully, and else we're just going to actually echo error happened, and then I'm just going to actually have MySQL there is actually a built-in function called MySQL error, and then this MySQL error, it takes also an argument, which, the connection variable, close that paragraph, and I think that would do it. Okay, so now let's actually go to this page, sign up, refresh. Let's actually try to test it. So now I'm gonna sign up. We're gonna go to confirm.php. We're gonna echo something for the user, but also we're gonna put stuff inside of our table. So now our table is empty. So if I go to browse, there's nothing in there. Let's actually test this out. So refresh, first name, test, phone number, submit, connection successful, welcome, the email address, row inserted successfully. So if you go here and refresh the page, you can see now the data is there. ID is auto incremented with 1 because, like if it doesn't have any other value, it's pretty much like 1. Name, I just put in, email I put in, the phone number is there. Let's actually test it one more time. Let's, you can actually have like a link down here, so you can actually say echo a tag href to let's actually skip this. It's actually called sign up up.php sign up page, and close the a tag, close. I think that should do it. So if I go back, refresh, give it one more name, test name, test.com 777, submit. So now if I actually go refresh, it is actually the data. So really so simple, and that's how you'd be able to take the information from the form, put it in the database. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you guys, and in the next video we're gonna do more things to this. So now we're just inserting, let's say I want to display all my users. How would I be able to do this? And primarily we're gonna see, we're just gonna change our SQL, and then because we're getting data back, we're just gonna display the data. That's the only difference. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.